Welcome back to Engineering Acoustics. Hi, this is Professor Ryan Harne. Now that we understand the basics of wave propagation, in this video we'll learn about the physiology of the hearing organs.
So let's get started. The physiology of the ear and the connections or neural pathways between the ear and the brain are what result in the hearing sense. And changes in the physiology or these neural structures from what we adapt to over time from birth result in hearing disorders, which directly affects the quality of life. And so it's important for us as engineers to learn about how we hear in order to make good engineering decisions in acoustics topics. Disorders might also be not related to physiological or neural changes. They could just have been identified at birth, such as people who are born with hearing loss or born deaf. But to understand hearing, we need to understand all of the physiology of the ear. It's the auditory system that we use to hear. This constitutes outer, middle, and inner ear regions. The outer ear is highlighted in brown and includes an auditory canal or ear canal that goes down to the eardrum, or also called the tympanic membrane. The middle ear is highlighted in red, includes a very unique combinations of bones and muscles. And finally, the inner ear is highlighted in blue, which connects to the cochlear nerve that leads to the brain. The temporal bone in our skull houses most of the auditory system to protect these very delicate structures. So let's start focusing on these areas of the ear one by one. The outer ear that's visible externally is called the pinna, or singular pinna. It's a Latin term, and this is the entrance to the ear canal. The pinna are mostly made of cartilage, a small amount of muscular tissue, such as if you're able to wiggle your ears, and other mammals have a little bit more control over ear motions than humans, but the pinna is otherwise designed to direct acoustic pressure down the ear canal and towards the eardrum, also called the tympanic membrane. The outer ear collects and directs sound down to the eardrum, and the eardrum is small. It's about the same size as a pencil eraser. The ear canal resonates as waves propagate down it, and resonances occur between about 2 kilohertz and 7 kilohertz, or 2,000 hertz in cycles per second and 7,000 cycles per second. The efficiency of acoustic energy transferred to the eardrum is still very low due to this impedance mismatch between the open air and environment and the very tiny confined ear canal. We see this in a plot here that's shown at right, which is a ratio of incident power to acoustic power that's received at the eardrum, and it rolls off or reduces logarithmically below about 2 kilohertz or 3 kilohertz. But there are some peaks locally between about 2 and 5-6 kilohertz due to the resonances of the eardrum. So what happens to that acoustic energy if it doesn't reach the eardrum? Well, it's literally reflected back out the ear canal. But once the eardrum begins to vibrate at the back end or inside of our ear canal, this causes vibration in the middle ear. The middle ear is open. It's not encompassed in fluid. It does not interact directly with the open air. It's a cavity inside the temporal bone. And the vibration from the tympanic membrane or eardrum causes these ossicles to vibrate. The ossicles are bones. They are the smallest bones in the human body. The ossicles are the malleus, which interfaces with the eardrum, the incus, and the stapes. The stapes interfaces with what's called the oval window of the inner ear, and we'll talk about that soon. These ossicles, we can think of them as like an active kinematic mechanism. They are coupled with small tendons and muscles and ligaments, but mostly they are a series of levers from the outer to inner ear. They're activated by being suspended through these ligaments and controlled by very small tendons. Not only are the ossicles the smallest bones in the body, but the muscles that control the ossicles are the smallest muscles in the body. These muscles relatively stiffen or activate the motion of the ossicles at these joints, which govern transmission from the eardrum to the oval window of waves. Of course, by reaching the eardrum, the waves turn into mechanical motions that are then propagated through the middle ear and then become acoustic fluctuations again at the oval window. The middle ear provides essential impedance matching phenomena because when a wave encounters a change of impedance, for instance, air to a rigid boundary, a portion of the wave is transmitted and a portion is reflected. But when the impedance difference is very large, most of that energy is reflected, like the example between the open air in the eardrum and the eardrum itself, which is a stiff membrane. The impedance difference between the air outside and the cochlear fluid is about 3 orders of magnitude. Ordinarily, all of that acoustic energy would be reflected. So the middle ear matches the impedance actively. The middle ear muscles modulate these ossicles to better match the impedance from outer to inner ear. Yet the power transmission efficiency is still very low. But the middle ear provides important gain, especially in the mid frequencies and towards the high frequencies, as we see in this plot here. Nevertheless, though, we do see that most of the acoustic energy at around 100 hertz and less, that's not shown in this plot, simply does not get into the inner ear. But there are other functions of the middle ear. In fact, acoustic reflex is an important function of the middle ear. The muscle that attaches to the stapes will respond to very high levels of acoustic stimulus. And there are multiple theories about how this reflex evolved, but one fact remains is that it occurs so that just before the hammer strikes in this video, our ears automatically clench up. So if you were to watch this video at a very loud volume, you would notice that your ears automatically clench and prevent the loud sound from actually passing through your eardrum to the oval window. The stapes clenches up and stops that transmission. Another unique function of the middle ear is the connection to the eustachian tube. I mentioned that the middle ear is an open cavity that's not directly interfaced with the open environment, but it can actively control that through the eustachian tube. This helps us drain fluid that might build up from infection out of the middle ear, but it also can be controlled by other bodily functions like swallowing and yawning. This helps us to open a valve to the eustachian tube and equalizes the pressure in the middle ear. So if you ever take off in a plane and you start to feel pressure in your ear, this is due to the fact that the pressure in the middle ear is less than the pressure in the environment of the plane. So by opening or yawning or swallowing or whatever it takes to trigger that fluctuation of the eustachian tube, it helps equalize the pressure from the eardrum side to the middle ear. And that's another important function of the middle ear. Now that we've learned about the outer ear and the middle ear, let's study the inner ear. In brief, the hair cells that are in the inner ear deform and trigger neural impulses that are sent to the brain. These hair cells deform for many reasons, one of which is due to very low frequency phenomena like changes in balance and position. The semicircular canals result in hair cell deformation that help us regulate our human balance and positioning of our body. But in terms of acoustic pressure and acoustic sources, the hair cells deform in the cochlea, and this is where hearing comes from. So let's look more closely at the cochlea. This is a coiled structure embedded within the temporal bone that's about 1 centimeter by 5 centimeter. It is coiled. On one side contains the semicircular canal, but other side contains a sequence of coils. The stapes causes the oval window to vibrate, and this creates waves in the cochlear fluid at the same frequency as the external sound. So the oval window vibrates, passing waves into this coiled cochlea. Likewise, once the waves propagate into the oval window, it interacts with a sequence of chambers filled with fluid, and all of these fluids result in additional wave propagation in the cochlea. The end of the cochlea at the end of the wrap is called the apex. So, the chambers of the cochlea include the scala vestibuli at the top, the scala media in the middle, and the scala tympani at the bottom. And we see these chambers are separated by membranes. The scala vestibuli chamber terminates at the oval window side of the middle ear. The vestibuli and tympani, top and bottom, join together at the end of the cochlea at the smallest point of the coil. And it's the Reasoner's membrane and basilar membrane that separate these scala. The organ of Corti is also at the center of the cochlea, and this rests on the basilar membrane and is also covered by another membrane called the tectorial membrane. The tectorial membrane is supported by spiral lamina, which is an additional interface between the scala media and scala tympani. Pressure fluctuations that occur in the scala media and in the scala tympani result in a relative motion of these membranes, the tectorial membrane and the basilar membrane. And as these membranes vibrate up and down, what happens is that the stereocilia start deforming. And as these stereocilia deform, they send electrical impulses to the brain through the cochlear nerve. So to summarize what we have learned about the ear so far, the outer ear collects sound and directs it to the eardrum. And once at the eardrum, the middle ear goes into action. And this helps to match the impedance from the air to the cochlear fluid for better energy transfer. And once the middle ear excites the oval window, acoustic fluctuations pass through the scala, and this is converted into electrical impulses as the stereocilia deform between the tectorial membrane and the basilar membrane. These are the functions of the auditory system, which are central to our hearing sense.
That's it for this video. In the next video, we'll learn about how these human hearing organs are used to create the hearing sense.